Okay. Welcome to the Yang Gang Roundtable. It is 10/18, Friday, June 5th, 2020. Welcome back, Jacqueline. It's been about a month, I think, since we saw you last. How have you been?
Well, it's really been rough, and I really missed you guys, and I'm just so glad you guys didn't feel that I was neglecting you or anything. But what happened was, when we got our COVID check, as you guys know, I haven't had any income at all in over a decade. I couldn't re-enter the workforce. Nobody would hire me, middle-aged woman from generational poverty, plus stigmatized throughout my younger working age years from a record incurred as a result of being a human trafficking survivor. And that record wasn't lifted until I was 47. Good luck trying to get your first job when you're a 47-year-old woman competing against middle-class white dudes who are 20 years old, who are younger than your husband's grandson. It just doesn't work, you know? So I thought, well, I don't have enough after getting propane so that we could cook, because we've been without our gas since 2007. So we used the conversion kit for our gas stove so we could hook up a propane tank to it so I can cook, which is kind of important as a diabetic. I can't have just any old, fast food or convenience store food. I've got to have foods that, will not spike my blood sugar. And that won't play with other problems that diabetes causes as well. So after paying for the propane tanks to get filled and buying a month's worth of diabetic-friendly good food, I mean meats like salmon, cod, lean meats, I had enough to get me and Donnie's cell phone bills caught up, which those were behind. This is, again, because of lack of income. And the internet caught up because I need the internet, to try to improve my situation. So I had about, just a few $100 left out of that. Well, Erie Water Department, we're way behind on our water, sewer, and refuse bill, way behind on the electric bill, like by many months. A total of almost $2,700 total between the two. The exact amount is $2,690. And it's like they were wanting it by June 12th. And I'm like, I don't know if I can pull this off, but I know how to trade. I got a few $100 to work with, and it's not enough to satiate either of those utility companies. Maybe I can, I'll get a moonshot and I'll make enough to prevent my water and power from being shut off. Because not only will I die if my insulin spoils, but I wouldn't have electric for my computer and my internet to run so that I can testify via remote for Yang Gang, for UBI, for Congress, in front of Congress. That, Angelo Mendoza has been working on putting that together. So I thought, well, I've got a few $100. It's not enough, to get the bills caught up. It's not enough to keep them from shutting us off. But I know how to trade. And, if I just had an income, I would always have money to trade. I wouldn't have to tear into the trading account and wipe it out and then wait until maybe somebody decides to give me or loan me a couple $100 again next year, But I thought, well, I'm going to put this to work, and I'm going to try to find trades that I can find even in this horrible market. There's still trades to be made. You can make money going down in the market by buying puts, which is the options trader's version of short selling a stock, except your risk of loss is not infinite. You're only risking the cost of the premium on the put. Or maybe find another market that is looking like it's going on the upswing, and you buy a call on that. So I was doing pretty good. I didn't think I'd come, I wasn't really doing well enough to really make the $2,700 in time, because it's just a couple weeks is not enough time when you're only working with a couple $100 to start. It's just not. It takes time to build that up. And 3 months, yeah. 3 weeks, But I was going to give it my best shot anyway. So I was like moving along and had little tiny profits, little wins here and there, little tiny wins for a little tiny trades, Then all of a sudden, President Twitter opens his mouth in the middle of the night on the Thursday before my 53rd birthday And he threatens nuclear war against not one, but two other superpower countries that could easily eat our breakfast and spit it out before noon. Well, let me tell you how markets react to that kind of unstable behavior from a president. The SPY and the Russell, the IWM, and the Dow all took an abrupt U-turn. They violated every rule in the candlestick chart reading, every rule in, the momentum you'd expect from looking at your golden cross, which is your moving average lines within respect to the 200 line, which is an important level because it's either a level of support or resistance depending on what side of that line you're on, if you're above it or below it. And I just saw a trade that I was sitting on as a swing trade overnight. I saw it tank. I mean, it plunged to the depths of the Marianas Trench. And I had lost 6 weeks of what I had previously made, what I started with to make up until that point. I lost down to basically my starting seed amount of a couple $100. And I'm like, oh, fuck me. I needed this to work out so that my electric isn't shut off because I'm diabetic. And that gets shut off. My medicine spoils. My food spoils. That's a death sentence for me. And there isn't all this help out there for poor diabetics that people like to think there is. The only people that you get that seem to get helped are people with kids or people who are fortunate to have jobs, or businesses. But someone like me who is a nobody from generational poverty for whom nothing worked out in life, there really is no help. So I just about died when I saw that. And I looked on my news feed, and sure enough, it was like 2 in the morning. Here he is going off with a bad case of verbal diarrhea at the keyboard, threatening other countries. The markets didn't like it. And they let everybody know they didn't like it because all the people in other countries that invest and trade in our markets, remember, the SPY and the Dow and the Russell, they trade around the clock because there's futures attached to those indices. So even though our markets are closed here, to us, it's trading time, wake-up time in other parts of the world. So you've got other traders and investors that are, buying and selling in the markets. And when they see President Twitter make a statement like that, like he's going to outspend China and Russia in a nuclear arms race, I'm going to tell you what, they hauled ass out of the markets faster than Madonna's underwear. Okay? Didn't like it. And it just compounded with the way he has handled the protests here in our country, because it's not just about yet another black man being ruthlessly gunned down, or not gunned down, but murdered. He wasn't gunned down. He was choked to death. He was bodily hauled out of the back of a cop car while he was handcuffed, slammed to the ground, and suffocated. It wasn't just that. It was that on top of a mounting tinderbox of 45 years plus of gratuitous cruelty and abusive social and economic policy towards the poor, of discrimination and life-threatening poverty, and black and white alike are fed up and fill the streets. It's just George, he became the epitome of injustice in America. And it was the spark that lit the tinderbox. Now, the correct thing to have done would have been to, number one, charge the cop who did that to him with first-degree murder, because that was not an accident. And I don't know about in the state of Minnesota where this happened, but in my state, in Pennsylvania, if it's not an accident, if it's not something that you did because you were temporarily insane or out of your mind, it is capital murder. It is premeditated. Even if you didn't plan it out in advance, but you, in an instant, snapped out and with the intention of causing harm, killed the person. That counts as murder one in my state. And in most states that, have capital punishment, whether they're Commonwealth states or not, they rule it the same way. What I saw on the videos that was shared was, something that, without a doubt, that policeman should have been charged with capital murder. No ifs, no buts, no bullshit. The other cops, as far as George Floyd's death.
No. I just wanted to let everyone know that it's currently sitting at a second-degree murder charge, and only the other officers are still getting a third degree. I agree, all of them should be moved up another degree to where they are legally appropriate and not be given shielding.
Right. I mean, they absolutely, in my state, let's say, for sake of argument, I hate to pick on you, Shield, but you know what? I missed you so much. Is it okay if I pick on you a little bit?
Sure.
Suppose, for sake of argument, you came over to visit me, and you brought some of your cookies that you decided to make diabetic friendly and share them, and we got ripped. And we walked up to the corner store or whatever, about 2 miles up the road. And let's say, God forbid, because I know you would never do this. This is not within you. But suppose you had a moment where you just felt the need to pull out a gun and, hold up the store, and the gun accidentally goes off during the robbery. You didn't intend to shoot anybody. You just wanted to scare them into giving up the goods. That would count as murder one. That would count as a capital crime because it was a murder that was committed during the commission of a felony. My being with you, even if I did not expect you to do that, my being with you would automatically get me charged as accessory to the fact, which carries the same charge and penalty as the one which you would receive. And, this is what I'm thinking when I'm viewing what's going on. I saw what happened is, no, all of those cops need to be charged with capital murder. Not leniency because they're cops. No. They need to be appropriately charged within the law, with what that state. Now, maybe Minnesota's laws are different than Pennsylvania's, but they need to be charged with the equivalent of accessory to premeditated murder.
Don't you worry, Jacqueline. The first, second, and third degree murder definitions are standardized across our nation. The problem is that they have qualified immunity, and that gives them legal shielding. So that's what we have to focus on and end. And more to the core, we need to help. We need to get a basic income into people's hands because, as Shales pointed out, the whole entire reason that man was under the police's neck was because he was trying to use a $20 bill that the store thought might be counterfeit.
Did the store even check it?
I have no idea. That's honestly beside the point at this time. A man is dead. Thousands are in the streets. We need change.
Yes, we do. But what really gets me upset is when I see people justifying the police's behavior towards George Floyd, okay, by saying, well, he was trying to spend a counterfeit $20 bill. Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Let's suppose he knowingly tried to pass a counterfeit $20 bill. The punishment for trying to use counterfeit money is not a capital crime. It might even be a misdemeanor, I mean...
And beyond that, he was given no due process and executed on the spot. That's despotism. That's absolutism. That's something we saw 3 or 4 centuries ago.
Yes, exactly. Well, actually, we saw it more recently than that. We saw it in Nazi-occupied Europe, where my grandparents fled from with just the clothes on their back by night and fog to come here. So they saw it. They saw that. And what I lived through, and before my grandparents died, when we were living in a racially diverse, impoverished Philadelphia ghetto, I saw it as a child with the Philadelphia Police Department's bombing of the Mouv 9. Okay? I saw it, before the bombing. The bombing happened when I was a teenager, like right after I escaped my traffickers. But it wasn't the first time that the police behaved in a fashion like that towards, members of the black community. Okay? And I remember our house being made unlivable because former Frank Rizzo, who was an unapologetic fascist, ordered the Philadelphia Police Department to basically shut off the water to all the houses in the neighborhood, even, people within a 6-block radius that had nothing to do with Mouv, didn't know what was going on. And then after they shut the water off to all of us, they turned on water cannons, and they made our house was in proximity to that, to the house where the Mouv people were living at the time. So and we were renters, so our place was made unlivable. And they did this to roust Mouv. Now, who Mouv was this was back in the early 70s, and the Black Panthers were very strong back then. And the Black Panthers were all about protecting, the men and women of their community, because they were always being targeted for these types of deaths at the hands of the police. We just now recently have cell phones to videotape or video film this. We didn't have that technology in 1972, 1974. We didn't have this technology in 1985. We have it now. But this has been going on for decades. And I lived through this as a child. I saw it. And I remember when, as a little child, as a poor child, as one of the few white kids that lived in this ghetto, I was also included and welcomed to come to the community breakfast that the Black Panthers had for poor children in the neighborhood. I didn't know anything about them. They were just these nice Black people that were feeding all the poor kids, And I later read in these inaccurate books and inaccurate media that these guys were terrorists and blah, blah, blah. They weren't terrorists. I had breakfasts with other poor children in the neighborhood that these guys, put on and fed the kids healthy food. They were about, taking care of their community. And Mouv was a part of the Black Panthers in a way. Except Mouv was like completely, they didn't want to even be bothered with trying to integrate, because it's like you didn't want to integrate with people who want to kill you. And that was, basically Mouv's whole thing. There was, a group of adults, and they all changed their last name to Africa. And, they had kids living with them. And they ate organic food, and they were the ones who were first to, do things like homeschooling and eating organic before it became popular among the Karens, if you will. Well, this earned them the label of being domestic terrorists, because they weren't participating in society, in a society that never wanted them to. Now, at the same time, a young, enterprising, young Black man coming up, a very, very brilliant young man who was a brilliant writer, his name was Wesley Cook. And Wesley Cook was such a gifted writer. He was writing and covering the issues in the community, particularly how Mouv was being treated by the Philadelphia police, and how the Philadelphia police had been treating the Black community at large for just doing nothing except using his power of language and words as a gifted young journalist. Wesley Cook, who later changed his name to Mumia Abu Jamal, was labeled a threat. The FBI had been keeping a dossier on him since he was a child because of his ability to use words. And he told the truth, and that scared the establishment. He was framed for the murder of a Philadelphia police officer that he did not commit, and he was unjustly sentenced to death for it in my state. It took public outcry from the nation of France to get the state of Pennsylvania to remove him down to life in prison and take him off death row. He's still in prison today. Before he went to prison, and this is what got him framed for the murder of Daniel Faulkner, the cop, the Mouv people who had been water cannoned out of where they lived in our neighborhood, they moved to a different house up on Osage Avenue in the Powelton Village area. And then Philadelphia's first Black mayor, Mayor Wilson Goode, ordered the Philadelphia police to drop a bomb on the Mouv home, killing several adults and children, unarmed, adults and children inside the home, destroying the homes of other residents that were, completely innocent, didn't have nothing to even do with, didn't even know what was going on. They were told to vacate. Philadelphia Police Department literally dropped a bomb. They didn't even give the children a chance to live. They dropped a bomb. They bombed the Mouv 9. Mumia Abu Jamal at that time was a young adult and a very successful radio journalist, and he was covering this. That is what put him in the crosshairs and got him framed. If you guys never saw the movie Serpico, which, by the way, is a true story about how crooked and corrupt the police were in New York, I would really suggest watching it if you can get your hands on it. The Philadelphia police were even worse back then. I lived through this. This happened in the 70s and 80s when I was just a young little girl. So what we have today is we have the ability to catch these cretins committing these crimes with the technology we have. We have drones that can cover and surveil an area, like they use in real estate when they show aerial views of properties. We've got iPhones and smartphones that can video capture stuff in real time. And that's why this is now first coming out, and why, a lot of younger people are just now learning just how bad things have always been. And I'm sorry, I don't want to go on because I don't want to hog all the speaking time. But thank you. And thank you for welcoming me back, Shale. I missed you guys.
Jacqueline, thank you. Now, this is the perfect opportunity for you to tell these long stories, like when we have no guests and it's a small group, and especially if you haven't been on in a long time, you could talk literally the entire 2 hours and be perfectly happy with it. I mean, you've just created a lot of good content. It's been very educational, and this is exactly where you should be taking over the episodes. But if you're gonna the guests, then that's when we share equally. But don't worry about it today. Thank you for remembering and being considerate.
Well, I've actually been practicing on my own because, Shale, I listen. Just because somebody may not deliver a message that might be sensitive to my feelings or something, that doesn't mean I'm not listening and taking it in and thinking, okay, where's the room for an improvement here? Now, if we could just get President Twitter to listen.
Reflective sort of guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, one person calls you an ass, ignore him, two, kind of shrug it off. But when half the nation is saying you're an ass, maybe it's time you invest in a fucking saddle.
But how self-reflective is old Uncle Joe? Is he really a sort of changed, reformed man? Is he a humble thinker, a servant of the people?
I don't know if he's able to be honest. I mean, he is in mid-stage dementia, and that's not being.
Beyond that, it's his character.
That's not who he is as a person, or who he was before he was demented.
It's how small he is. He doesn't truly understand the stakes that he is standing in, or the context or the gravity of the context within where he is. He famously, to his staff on the first day that he walked into the office, said, "Treat my presidency as if every day I have a new villain to vanquish."
Very similar to Trump, right? Very similar.
No, that's what he said. Trump said that.
Oh, okay. I was mistaken. But I would believe that Biden said that too, because Biden is also a ridiculous clown.
Absolutely. Biden is completely ridiculous. Even saying, I think this morning, 15% of Americans are definitely not good people. And I'm like, where is that statistic coming from, and why are you even saying that on the campaign trail?
What's the criteria for good people, and what in the hell are you doing? How does that help your campaign in any way? That is a purely detrimental statement, is it not?
I think they're really trying to push the wire and make it a head-to-head race against the worst possible opponent ever. They don't want a landslide.
The thing that worries me is I'm not only medically vulnerable, I'm also physically vulnerable because I haven't been able to economically provide for myself since forever, despite trying everything humanly possible to unpoor myself. And now I'm diabetic. I have Crohn's disease. I'm 53 years old. I don't even have a car, and I can't afford to take Ubers anywhere. And it's like, I won't survive this. I was trying to trade to prevent my utilities from being shut off because unlike the people that are lucky to be getting unemployment checks, I never even got the opportunity to earn what they're collecting in federal emergency and state unemployment benefits combined. I never even got an opportunity to earn what they're getting in just the federal supplemental unemployment benefits alone. If I was getting $2,400 a month, just me, not including my husband's Social Security, oh my God, that would be permanently life-changing, you know? And I was trying to, dig my way out of poverty, but I didn't have enough time. And, they say, well, you can get a doctor's note. Well, no. The only Medicaid accepting doctor that was accepting new Medicaid patients when I finally got approved for Medicaid as a poor childless adult was, he has a policy, he's affiliated with a hospital and a physicians group that has a policy that they don't write notes for utility companies unless it's a child with a medical condition and it has to be a respiratory condition. They won't even do it for
Wow.
children.
That is beyond barbaric. I didn't even realize that our health system went that far in the private sector.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all state by state.
It's company by company. That's how loose these policies are.
They wouldn't do it when my husband, this is why we've been without our gas for 10 years, when my husband had his second major heart attack and had to have a second major emergency triple bypass. They wouldn't help us, and we lost our gas, and we were never able to get on our feet and get it back on. And what people don't understand about poverty, they understand that, okay, savings compounds interest, investments compound interest, money grows into more money. But they don't understand that it also works in the opposite direction. When you've been left a founder in abject poverty for too long, things keep building up, and it snowballs and avalanches until things become so unfixable that, excuse my language, you're fucked with your pants up.
Absolutely.
And you can't do for yourself. And you're having to repeatedly beg online, and every time you have to do it, it just crushes your soul into the ground. Because, having to end up like this, living in a house without hot water, living under the threat of dying from not being able to preserve my insulin and my food, this wasn't, and having to constantly throw myself at the mercy of the public and hope I get helped to mitigate one poverty crisis after another. This is not how I envisioned my life to be when I was struggling around a learning disability, around dyslexia, as a homeless, destitute, human trafficking survivor that, number one, the society allowed to get thrown away and trafficked as a homeless 12-year-old child, and then number two, did zero to help me pick up the pieces of my life when I had no living family that was able to do that for me. And I'm still being neglected today, and I did all these right things. Don't have kids you can't afford, yet not having kids is why I'm not getting any help, It's such an unfair slap in my face. And then every time I hear somebody say, workers this, workers that, you know what? It makes me feel like I should have just eaten a bullet 35 years ago after I escaped my traffickers and got it over with. I should have never bothered trying anything at all. That's how it makes me feel every time I have to beg for donations, because I have no way of getting any money to live now that I'm old and diabetic and don't even have a car. Never mind clothing, which I haven't been able to afford to even buy any clothes in over a decade. All my clothes have holes in them. Out of style by, 15 years? Since they came out of donation bins or Goodwill thrift stores back then, And it's just so hard. People have no idea. You cannot, just give somebody not enough help or say, okay, well, here's a one-time shot in the arm. Now you can be on your way now. That's not how it works. Compound interest works both ways.
Well, it works more insidiously on poverty because it works like inflation on wealth. It's a hidden tax. Poverty comes with hidden charges that compound.
Well, it's like this. If I would have been given enough help to totally change my life 10 years ago, before I was diabetic and before I developed Crohn's disease and definitely before I, was without a car, what would have been a $5,000 roof repair is now a $55,000 roof replacement because it's slate. And, being below the poverty level, there's no bank that's going to give us a loan. We don't have the income to repay the loan. We're living in a house that's falling apart around us. We have no one to take us in. Because I did what the privileged people lecture poor women to death about. Don't have kids you can't afford. Well, I didn't. Now I've got nobody to take care of me. I am so angry about the lies that the public has been told for the past half century It's just beyond infuriating.
I would actually like to compound on that because I'd like to talk about drug laws in this tense time. If you have anything else to say on your harrowing story today, Jacqueline.
No. No,
I want to.
Heck, I'm glad to hear you guys. I missed you guys. Hugs to you guys.
We missed you too, Jacqueline. Hugs.
I'm especially glad you're alive. You know, I don't know what happens to you when I don't hear from you for like a month. So.
Like dropping off the face of the planet.
I see now and then on the Twitter. You know,
I'm still at a $750 shortfall that has to be met before June 12th.
You know, we applied to the 1K project on your behalf. We nominated you. We
I know.
The 1K project on. I guess you have. I don't know where you are with them. We're doing whatever we can.
They won't.
Trying to figure it out here.
They won't. I don't think they're going to help me because I never heard from them. But I looked on their website, and they're only interested in helping people that lost jobs or incomes due to COVID and who have dependents, not including spouses. So that excludes me.
We described your situation when we had them on our show, and they said that you qualified. So I mean, I know it seems a little confusing. I did read that on their website too. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They seem like good people. I think everyone is just doing their best. But I know it's frustrating.
I applied and I sent Jeremy a copy when I explained my situation, and I didn't go into too much detail because as a poor marginalized trafficking survivor. Even though that record has been lifted, it's still a deeply stigmatizing status, and I don't know who it is safe to mention that to. I mean, that's a whole nother bag of shit that I have to live with, for the rest of my life, however few years I have left. So I didn't mention that part because it's scary to mention that part. You know what I mean by scary? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I hope I don't sound too kooky or...
You don't sound kooky at all.
You don't. You really don't, Jacqueline. But moving on with that stigma, drug laws, especially in this racially tenuous time, I think we should talk about those because they really are just an accessory to exercise racial discrimination. They don't actually do anything to help stop what is already violent crime and covered crime with other laws.
You're exactly right. I lived through that too, and I saw it. Serpico, that's why you guys really got to check out that movie Serpico, which actually is a true story. You had cops that actually planted evidence on black suspects. They still do it. This has always been a problem. It was the CIA that brought the drugs into the black community, It was our CIA.
There are videos of cops putting weapons in protesters' hands, just like they're less than 24 hours old as I speak this. It doesn't change.
Right. It's just the only difference is that now we have the technology to catch the fuckers in the act. Excuse my language. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's completely true. The bigger question, though, for our judicial system as well as our legislative system is the political will there to really change this? Because the reason it's systemic is because there are legal protections and independent policy protections that allow for the culture of freedom, violent freedom, within these police precincts. The fact that culture is there is the problem.
Well, the police started out, they started out, their origin of birth was in the slave patrols. In the
absolutely, they absolutely did get their start there, but we have had major reforms over the centuries to make them more of a modern police unit. We just haven't gone the full step like Japan has. We really need to model Japan because they have police officers literally standing around wasting taxpayer money, and that's for the good of the public.
You know what? I'd rather have taxpayer money pay them to just stand there than what they're doing, because what they're doing is what they've always been doing has been so incredibly harmful. And yes, it was always directed at poor communities, especially poor black communities. And if you were poor and white and you lived in one of those poor black communities, you got caught up in that net too. But it was
absolutely. It was redlining.
It was even aimed at poor white communities too. I mean, they made a Netflix documentary called Making a Murderer, where they literally, did a bullshit number on forcing a coerced confession out of a learning disabled and intellectually disabled underage boy, just to be able to nail his uncle because they had a grudge against the uncle for winning a lawsuit against the state for being unfairly, imprisoned for a rape he didn't commit. So they go after the learning disabled nephew and just to get the uncle. That kid, Brendan Dassey, is still in jail. He's still in prison. U.S. Supreme Court won't hear his case. His uncle is still in prison. I mean, it was just terrible. These were poor whites in rural Wisconsin, in Manitowoc. So cops have always had a history of targeting poor people, but being black and whether you're poor or not is just another tool of convenience for the police, because you might be able to, if you're lucky to have not lost your teeth yet from lack of dental care, you can sort of almost hide being poor if you're white, sometimes, but you can't hide being poor and black. You can't hide being black, period. And what they've always been doing has been nothing short of, deliberate targeting of entire groups of people.
And
absolutely,
they shouldn't have to hide that they're black. If anything, no one in this country should ever have to, hide the fact that they are, humans.
No.
And that's the most horrific part about all this.
Exactly. And now it was made viral for the entire world to see. Other countries in the European Union have designated the United States for the first time ever as one of the countries that is one of the most dangerous countries in the world for journalists. I mean,
absolutely.
There's at least targeting journalists that are covering these events, and they're particularly targeting female journalists to take out their eyes, literally targeting them with the intent of knocking their eyes out with tear gas canisters and rubber bullets. This is deliberate. This is deliberate. And when they see that you're with media, that you have cameras and microphones, come on. They know that you're covering media. You're not part of the protest. You're covering the protest.
Absolutely. And that goes for even if they're thinking that major media is small podcasters, because small podcasters have just as much of a First Amendment right to cover these peaceful protests that the police are instigating into riots.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct.
And the problem of them targeting poor people isn't just racial, because even in northern states, they didn't have laws applied to them which allowed these systemic problems to re-flourish through a more capitalistic slavery, that police precinct revenues depended on the fact that these police officers went into poor areas and apprehended people so that the state would pay them to keep operating.
Yep, that's correct. When I say there's been a war on the poor for the past half a century, I'm not speaking hyperbole. I'm speaking truth to power. And that truth, unfortunately, makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but it is nonetheless the truth. And now everybody's seeing that, unfortunately, for the first time.
Honestly, I think it is fortunate that social media has been able to cover this so well, and we've had a pandemic to put everyone's attention on it, because this is, like you've said, been almost boiling over for over 4 decades, even longer, honestly.
Oh God, yes. Oh my God, yes. It was going on. You ever hear the Billy Joel song, "We Didn't Start the Fire"?
Yes, I have. I'm very familiar with the lyrics and what they represent.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's like that. It was like, and I'm on the older end of Gen X. It's like that dumpster fire was already in progress when I came onto this planet. And I do believe that there's, it's part of a larger, broad set of policies designed to basically cull the poor. That's why we had laws like Act 201 in the state of Pennsylvania that deregulated every utility company and allowed the utility companies and the medical community to decide to not cut people off with medical issues if they're poor and can't pay their utility bills. but without their utility service, they die. And that was passed in the early 2000s. And, you know, there were many different groups, the Pew Research Group, the National Association Fire Protection Agency. All these independent groups had all this data, which I put in my book, Classism for Dimwits, along with a partial list of deaths, you know, a short list of just only a few of a very long list of deaths that occurred. And it was all happening at the same time. It was happening at the same time that the police were given more and more, should I say, authority to be abusive. All of this was building up, and now it's at a crescendo.
It really is. And honestly, I only see one real way of it ending, and it's not with police reform. It's with truly a basic income, because I don't think people are going to stop until the institutional trust between the people and the government is rebuilt, because our social contract has essentially dissolved among most of our citizens now.
Yeah. And that dissolution began when I was a child. I lived through this. I mean, you know, Johnson's Great Society programs, I complain about them justly because, you know, they are cliffs and they don't give people money. They give you food stamps that you can't use if you don't have a car to go to the store and all that. But you know what? It at least for back then, 50 years ago, it was better than absolutely nothing. And even those stingy, paltry, paternalistic programs were, you know, fought against. They were fought against by, you know, very wealthy, privileged interests that they didn't want senior citizens to have medical care. They didn't want poor people to have medical care. They didn't care if children starved to death. You know, they didn't want those programs. And the attacks on the Great Society began before LBJ left office. I lived through that. I remember so much from my childhood. And I remember seeing the police getting more and more violent as I was growing up. You know, it was a joke when the anti-trafficking movement got colonized by wealthy right-wing Christian interests like the DeVos family and the Prince family and others like them of the Christian dominionist subset of the broader evangelical community, very wealthy, far-right, powerful interests. When they colonized the anti-trafficking movement, and they now control who gets anti-trafficking funding, and it's not the survivors who need to rebuild their lives. It's their own, you know, religious charities with, you know, the bulk of the money going to their administrators. And these are the same people that have been using their wealth to lobby for laws that the response to poverty has been, quote, law and order, i.e. your 3 strikes laws, your drug laws, your
mandatory minimum laws. And those are, I completely agree. Using the system like this just to extract federal resources out of citizens through a false economic theory is bizarre, and I cannot believe we haven't crumbled from international doubt yet.
Well, if President Twitter opens his mouth and keeps opening his mouth, which we know he will, and continues to threaten other countries, especially, you know, 2 other superpowers like Russia and China with nuclear war, you know, the rest of the world community is going to decide that the United States is a big problem child and has made the entire globe unsafe for everybody. And, it's not going to end well if we can't correct course and do an about face real fast. And I mean, real fast. I mean, faster than Madonna's underwear can haul ass.
Honestly, the only way I can see us doing a U-turn like that is if the DNC does something truly unprecedented and nominates Andrew Yang as the presidential nominee. That is the only way I see us pulling that magnificent U-turn.
Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me, actually. My sister brought up an article that was published yesterday, and that these mayors, this group of mayors that Trump had talked to directly, Trump was explicitly hinting at.
Hinting at what, Angelo?
We lost you there, Angelo.
I'm hearing Angela.
Yeah, I was hearing Angela through Jacqueline as well. That's very strange.
Yeah,
So
I think Jacqueline,
avatar was
you may
lighting
need
up
to
when Angela spoke.
You may need to unmute your mic.
Angela, maybe
Jacqueline.
you should leave and come back. Leave the room and come back. I think there's been some bizarre technical error. Truly the most bizarre technical error I've ever seen on Discord. I was also in disbelief until you confirmed. I was like, this can't be happening. This must not be happening.
Same. I was just like,
have you ever played the GameCube game Eternal Darkness? It was like that. It was like that sort of. It's a sort of really trivial impossibility.
Dude, I saw what happened. I fucked up. I had a senior moment. I forgot to kill the Zoom thing.
Oh, the mystery is solved. Okay,
yeah.
wow.
So
Angela, you're still having...
That was incredible.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
It was funny. Don't apologize.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Keeping us on our toes.
I had a senior moment, I say.
But welcome, Ariel. We're talking about drug laws and how they are racially tinged throughout, and we thought it was appropriate to talk
about. So,
Angela,
you were saying?
Yes, now that I'm back and I can hear everyone. So, Trump had talked to a group of mayors and said not only did he want them to basically kill protest leaders, but he was asking for more violence against protesters, saying, and I quote, hurt them and hurt them badly, because the more badly they're hurt, the less likely they are to come back.
That is beyond the pale in the egregiousness department.
Who said that?
Orange Twittler.
Okay.
Yeah, President Twitter.
Well, that's not the sentiment you want from the commander-in-chief, the person in charge of the military.
That man is not fit to be in charge of an outhouse.
Well, no, but he is, he is. That's the thing. He's in charge.
That's the terrifying thing.
Unfit as he is.
You guys, how bad do you guys think this is going to get? We're going to be third world status eventually?
I think we're there because the mayor of D.C. had to invoke the Third Amendment to force military troops out of D.C. hotels.
Damn.
Oh my God.
That hasn't happened since the Civil War, has it?
I don't think it has.
That's
no.
Wow. That's incredible. This is history. History is on.
It's been 100%. History ever since coronavirus. I mean, yeah.
Well,
it's time to get basic income.
I mean, they say neoliberalism is a post-historical worldview, so it really cannot continue if history is progressing and the state of the world is shuffling around, the status of countries is shuffling around again.
Yeah, but what's absolutely terrifying is we have never had a president in our history that is this out of control.
Yeah, just so my friend
Andrew Jackson probably, right?
Yeah. Even Andrew Jackson was not this close to a dictatorship.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had to use multiple amendments already, dramatically.
He says, a Jewish friend of mine says, start stockpiling canned food, water, and emergency supplies. Those wise in history, economics, social studies, and politics and geography, and those who grew up in depressed countries or are close to their relatives from former USSR, Germany, etc., know that what we have experienced so far is the tip of a rising iceberg or the smoke from an angry volcano. Wait until people are starving, a wise friend told me. As far as we've fallen, there's still a very long way down to go. Do you think this is, he says, I'm not saying this is inevitable, God forbid, but the factors pointing towards much more difficult conditions to come.
Let me give you context here, Ariel. Our stock market is actually a fairly decent representation of the macroeconomy at large. Not the microeconomy where most of us live, but the macroeconomy where most of our actual economic growth happens. The Dow is a great general index, and it was at almost $30,000 per share at the beginning of this crisis, and it only dropped about $5,000. It still has another $25,000 it could drop, and that's representative of the entire economy. We have so much farther we can fall, and if this isn't handled right, we will.
Thing that I hate, and you know what? I'm not normally one to entertain tinfoil hat stuff or conspiracy theories. But you know, there's an old adage, it goes like this: even a broken clock is right twice a day. And of all the crazy crap that Alex Jones has spewed over the years, there's one thing that always kind of stuck with me, and that was that the government would deliberately drop the ball in the event of a national crisis that was imperiling our health or our food supply, and use that as a pretext to just round people up and just do away with them, you know. And
wow, that is pretty much happening right now. Is Alex Jones reiterating that? Because it sounds like he should be.
He was talking about that years ago before he went completely around the bend with his Pizzagate nonsense and his other and his wanting to give
gay toads
and his wanting to give everybody rim jobs or I don't know if that's what he meant by
eat your ass, yeah.
But sorry about that. My computer is connected with my phone. They're synced, so whenever somebody tries to call the phone, the computer picks it up, even when my phone is off. But yeah, Alex Jones talked about this years ago when he was still relatively, I don't want to say normal.
Sane, yeah.
But he wasn't around the bend yet. I mean, he hadn't completely lost the plot at that point, you know? And there was a lot of stuff that he said that actually, you know, it's not far-fetched. And conspiracy really shouldn't be a dirty word, because conspiracy is a concept of law. It's grounded in fact. There were actual conspiracies. I mean, look at the conspiracy to murder Abraham Lincoln. The Mary Surratt, John Wilkes Booth, and all those guys, George Atzerodt, and what the hell was the other guy's name? But that was a conspiracy. You know, it's not without any foundation in reality. What gives conspiracies a bad name, or a suspected conspiracy theory a bad name, is when you have people that just completely lose the plot, like, you know, obviously Alex Jones did. But there were certain things he said, you know, going back 2008, 2009, where he was a lot more sane than he is today. That if you thought about it, it's like, yes, this actually could happen, knowing the history of our country, knowing what we've lived through and what I've lived through in my lifetime and what now you guys are living through in your lifetime and will be living through after I'm dead and gone, you know, and it's like, I have to honestly say, yeah, that this might be the time, one of those moments where that broken clock was right. And it's scary to think about that. But we know that there's unlimited money when it comes to the Pentagon, the military, and, you know, militarizing the police. We know that, you know, it's no object to come up with money to outfit unused FEMA facilities, FEMA camps, as Alex Jones used to call them, to round people up and put them in, and probably have them done away with. I mean, look at what we've seen with the military budget compared to what gets spent on social programs for the poor and the elderly and the disabled, and education for the youth, and you know, basic, you know, public good kind of stuff. I mean, my God, we've got a madman in the White House who wants to starve the post office to death, for God's sake.
And you know what's frightening about all this is they're always investing in the levers that keep control, the levers of power that maintain control over the average citizen, but they won't invest in helping the average citizen.
Of course not. Why are you surprised about that?
Yeah. And what's terrifying about this is, you know, we have a president that's acting more and more like a dictator, but even Adolf Hitler himself couldn't seize full dictatorial powers until he suspended the Constitution, which is exactly what Trump has been calling for. Because when martial law is declared, the Constitution is suspended.
That's correct. And Hitler didn't have anywhere near as much of a pretext to do so as Trump did. Hitler's pretext was the Reichstag fire. Trump's pretext is the COVID pandemic, and of course the reaction to the government's miserable failure to help the people through it, and the result of the government once again blaming the people who are hungry and who are freaking out, who are facing utility shutoffs and homelessness, and no jobs to go back to if they had one in the first place. A lot of people that were suffering before this happened are suffering even worse now because food prices have gone up. And if you live in an area where all the stores are moving to online platforms only to mitigate a problem with a possible second wave of this virus, well, food stamp recipients can't use their EBT cards to get their groceries from those supermarkets via Instacart or the supermarket's own curbside express platforms, and they all know this. I mean, Congress knows this. The president knows this. They don't care. It's almost like they want to bring about, massive suffering and collapse. And the only reason I could think of that would be their motive is that they want to deracinate the country. And deracinate means kill off or shove out as much of the human population as possible to make more space for the super rich, for themselves. That is the only logical reason I could think of for, our government to be responding in the way that it is and has been for a long time. Do you guys have any, to quote Peter Clemenza from The Godfather, do you have any gooder ideas?
I have one that I'd like to propose as more of an Occam's razor. Trump isn't that complex. He even if he's manipulated, can't articulate enough to clear out massive swaths for reconstruction. And I doubt he will even see reconstruction or be a part of it, because he's going to have trial after trial after his presidency, which is definitely going to be soon, because even with this tenuous time and Biden being a fuck-up, the incumbent is dealing with riots. There's no way he wins in a fair election. The real thing I see him with this is just simplistic reactions, honestly. Like I said earlier, he wants to be seen as like some hero in a television show every day as the president. So he just sees these riots as like, oh, law and order is dissolving and I have to do something about it. And it's just big tough guy stuff, but he's hanging out in a bunker. So the context doesn't really sell his statement.
Well, no, but if you look at who is, he's a peasant Avante being controlled on the strings. And I'm going to tell you where those strings are. Google theonomy movement, Theonomy. And then I want you to Google after that, Christian dominionism, R.J. Rushdoony. And then deep dive, Betsy DeVos and Eric Prince. You're going to find that this is a faction with more money than the Koch brothers, and they don't believe in human rights. They don't even believe in the same Bible as normal mainstream Christians. They believe that they have the obligation and the duty and right as Christians to enforce Levitical law, to resurrect Mosaic law, and use the Constitution as a vehicle to do so, and then dispense with the Constitution. Mosaic law is replete with stonings to death for things as simple as breaking the Sabbath, and
so the Islamic framing of religious laws that currently exist that right wings are always concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, the guys, these are very wealthy, powerful people here in the United States, and these guys, the only difference between them and like the Taliban or ISIL or ISIS is that they wear more stylish Western clothing and they operate by stealth using their wealth. They have a lot more wealth, and they are using their wealth to slowly, and I've seen this over the years, seize the levers of control of power in government, starting out at local levels and then moving up to the state, and now you have it in Congress. What part of their belief system is that not only do human rights not matter, they believe in this warped version of Dutch Calvinism that teaches that, basically if you're poor, it's your own fault. And, if people have to suffer and die so that they can make America a Christian nation again, even though it never was one. It's there, so there's no again. And they believe that they are obligated to do so by seizing control of every institution. And it's called Seven Mountains Dominionism. And they view the Seven Mountains as media, business, education, entertainment. And I have it in my notes and I got to dig them out. But there's these seven mountains. You can Google this to fact check me. Please feel free to do so. And that when they do this, that only then will they be able to bring about the return of Jesus Christ. And they really believe this. Now, it doesn't matter if everybody else doesn't believe this. The fact is that they believe it, and they are willing to cause enormous suffering and deaths and oppression to fulfill this, because they literally believe it. You want to talk about a dangerous cult.
I was going to say I get very culty vibes from that.
Yes.
And it honestly makes a lot of sense with all the actions of those actors, because without that context, they just seem really malicious and random. But with the context of trying to acquiesce essentially the entire American federal system for definitively eugenics through economic Darwinism as they see fit.
That's correct. And they've already succeeded. I mean, Mike Pence is part of that Christian.
Well,
so is Ted Cruz.
Like, as dumb as I think the country is sometimes, and, no offense to our listeners, if you're listening to this, you're probably you're pretty intelligent. Let's just leave it at that. So, I really think people are seeing through that charade. So, what do you call it? I think this is like the death strikes of a snake. What do you call that thing when the snake's just about to die and it just like lashes out on you?
Yeah, death throes.
Yeah, these are just the death throes of these bastards, because they can't keep it up anymore. The military is saying, no, we're not listening to you. Most of the people are saying, no, we're not listening to you. It's just whatever is deeply embedded in this system, we're seeing its death throes. Because I'm sure that if it came right down to it, because it's something really caught my attention when the police were walking by that guy who they, brutally pushed and probably cracked his skull. The National Guard person was the one who knelt near him and was actually trying to help him. So worse comes to worse, I think that, the good elements of this country, and call me an idealist, are more than the bad elements of this country, but the bad elements of this country have been hiding through, gossip and bullshit and nonsense and propaganda, and that's starting to wear off. And we are just seeing their death throes.
Well, I don't know about that, Ariel, because these guys have been using their wealth behind the scenes for decades. And what they've done was they've already seized the levers of power in quite a few areas, not just government, but in commerce and, business and economics. And even though, the National Guard doesn't agree with what's going on, or we don't agree with them, or other people are starting to question them, the problem is that they initially were able to weasel in and do this because they were able to seek safe harbor within the broader evangelical Christian community and use their Bible to browbeat their fellow Christians into putting up with their shit.
I mean, I said this yesterday. Pat Robertson called out Trump for calling the governors jerks. Pat Robertson. He said, you just don't do that. It's not cool.
Pat Robertson's not a dominionist.
He's not a dominionist. Okay,
No.
well...
He's not.
Well, yeah. Well, I see that, I really don't think that to have the whole U.S. population and eventually the military go against you, they're going to be fucked one way or another. I mean, it's only going to be the really deep embedded parts of this thing that's really going to defend them, but everybody else wants them out of here. It's just going to take a little bit of time,
It's the amount of wealth that grants them the power.
Right. But wealth doesn't mean shit if nobody wants to listen to you anymore. Know?
But you remember that governor, the lieutenant governor in Texas, who said people should literally die for the Dow? I mean, Daniel
Yeah.
Patrick.
Yeah.
He's in that dominionist. He's part of that.
Right. But like people are beginning to wake up now, and I really think even the military is starting to wake up. And I just don't think that it's by any possible way they're gonna win. They're not. It's just impossible. You know, the wealth only means something if people give it meaning. The dollar in your pockets and the numbers on your screen that you have in your bank account only have meaning if people decide to give it that meaning. Even gold, like if somebody doesn't like gold, you can't go to a supermarket and pay for anything with gold. You know, it's things. So I really think that, you know, their wealth is going to be meaningless if people just hate them. Because no matter, even if you're wealthy, like you can't force someone to do business with you. Like, you know, no shirt, no shoes, no service. Now it depends. Like you can go into a store, you know, in your underwear and want to buy something for like $1 million, and the guy's going to say, okay, you have $1 million, like let's do business. But at the same time, you can't buy it with less money. But it doesn't, even if you have like all the money in the fucking world, if people hate your guts, and they're okay with their lives, they're not going to want to do business with you. So I think that, you know, they're not going to win. It's not going to happen.
I hope you're right, Ariel. I really hope you're right, because this is a small, but not so small and very, very dangerous bunch. And, you know, we've seen the proliferation of a lot of horrible things, and a lot of
right.
They have been the velvet glove over the iron fist.
Right.
I'm going to go ahead and call you an idealist, Ariel, because I do think that is I want it to happen as well, but we're going to go through some troubling, turbulent times beforehand because of how vast and interconnected our technologies and tools are, especially to the ultra wealthy. The scale of what we can do now, even with a small group of people, is vastly different now.
That is true, although I think I have to side with both of you saying that Mike Bloomberg showed the limits of wealth and the power that it can generate. Because you can be wealthy, but you still need people willing to follow. So it is true that wealth can buy you a lot of power, and that alone is a huge danger. And, you know, there are people like Trump that have already proven that, you know, people can be bought. However, you know, Mike Bloomberg showed that there is a limit to that. And no matter how wealthy you are, you know, if you can't get people to buy into the bullshit, there is a limit.
Yeah,
right.
There really is. And I'm glad you brought up Bloomberg, because it does kind of give some credence to Ariel's. There is Ariel's theory, because there is a true limit in the political sphere on money.
Right, and you need like this rhetoric is very powerful, but like Trump, and Trump's pretty good at it, but he's not that articulate with it. So I mean, if you just get a few not so wealthy people with just like awesome rhetoric, then, you know, you can kick these people's asses just out of the damn way. I mean, like, you know, because if you get hearts and minds, it doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter anymore. People's hearts and minds are with you and not with the people who have money. Yeah.
You just hit the nail right on the head with something, Ariel. I'm going to expand on that a little bit. I've always said that language matters, that words have power. And we know, being raised Jewish, what Lashon Hara is and why that's like the greatest sin a Jewish person can commit, right? Well, the power of language works in the other way, too. It works for good. When, through our use of the power of words and language to help get the message out and educate other people and show them and back our stuff up. I mean, like I said, I just gave you guys a bunch of sources, and I don't bring sticks to gunfights. These are things that a lot of people have not had the time to dig into. They don't know this, but they're going to know it now because we have the technology to make it available. And also we have a lot more people that are not going to have jobs, and they're going to be wondering why their lives have been screwed, and they're going to be looking for somebody to blame, and they won't have to look far. They won't.
We're already seeing that with all these protests. I
Yeah.
mean, like spontaneously, like thousands and thousands of people just spilling into the streets. Like I had like tears in my eyes because I always thought that like the LA city council was like shit, and nobody gave a damn when I kept talking about politics with people. They're like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? All those people now who I think who were telling me, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Are like out there on the streets, like blocking the mayor's house. Like we had like thousands of people in front of our city hall, and we had an 8.5 hour roast of our like police services with only 2 calls that were in support, and the rest of the 200 were like were oh my god, it was wonderful.
It's like here in Erie County, Pennsylvania, where I live, in the city of Erie, which is a very small city. It's actually a town. Never had a riot. There's a black community here, but there was never any riots. Not even during the 1960s. Not even during the early 70s when all that turbulence was going on. What happened over the past weekend was the larger, and I always say Erie County is like the Mississippi of the North. What happened was white people came out in droves with the communities of color, people that could get there, of course, who had cars, and they converged upon downtown Erie, and they were demanding changes. They were demanding economic justice.
Yeah.
They were demanding economic justice. And you had, when I saw that, I was like, Mayor Bill Schember is addressing Erieites on the GoErie.com news site. And I'm like, oh my God, there was a small, tiny mini riot. And it was a mini riot. Only 1 or 2 businesses got kind of vandalized, and that was the downtown Starbucks and some craft sandwich shop that's, kind of caters to the professional upper middle class crowd. And those were targeted because they represent the face of privilege, and to people who have struggled, as economic underdogs and had the wealth of others rubbed in their face. And they were just so fed up. They just, now it wasn't as bad here as we've seen with the other cities, but the fact that there was anything that happened here at all, when we never had this before, never, that tells you something right there.
Yep. And what's interesting, like you said, education, that there was this young daughter, and her mom was actually saying to like shoot the protesters on the street because she was so brainwashed with propaganda. She thought that the protesters were hurting people. But then when the daughter showed her mom that they weren't being violent and they weren't being mean or nasty, and they just wanted their rights, the mother changed her tone 180. She said, let's bring them some water. Let's help them out. So it's just education. Yeah,
and a lot of that is, if I had a vehicle, I would be doing citizens journalism work right now. I only have like an iPhone, but I think Donnie has a camera upstairs somewhere. It's just buried. It's old. It's ancient technology, but it will work. It'll be compatible with what I have that I could share with others if I just had a way to get out and do this. But a lot of this is that people literally have to see this. A picture says 1,000 words. And we saw that with the way George Floyd's, senseless murder was captured and made viral.
Right. And
that's like our best defense, except if we go out and we do this, and we need to make sure that Yang Gang members who are doing this, who are acting as observers, as citizens, journalists, observing, to go to a military surplus store, get one of those metal World War II war helmets, and get eye protection, because the police will aim for your eyes. They will aim those tear gas canisters and the rubber bullets at the eyes of journalists or people that are trying to cover what they're doing.
Order a full face mop suit, the same way that the military uses, it's used for nuclear, biological weapons, and, protects you from radiation as well.
Yeah.
Like this thing has a fine particulate thing. So those offer full face protection and protection from tear gas. So
yeah, and I got some actual news. It is working because LA's budget was about to go 54% to the police, which is like a travesty. And Mayor Garcetti cut $150 million from the police budget, which is a little bit, like, as crazy as it sounds, a drop in the bucket. But they're actually asking to cut the funding even more. So it went from 54% of the budget going to the police to 51%, but we got to get it down to like 10, not even 10. Like,
oh, how about the basic income comes from there, huh?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. You know, the Pentagon loses more money in its fucking sofa, you know, in 1 year than what's been spent on the people in the past 3. So yeah.
So I think
out all this crap, and let's not have a violent society. And, you know, because if people are being taken care of, if people
they're not going to do these things.
They're not. They're going to be looking at how they can better their lives. They'll have hope. They'll have a basic floor on which to stand. They'll be able to catch their breath and take time to learn new skills for the first time and think about things that they never thought were available to them. They'll get to meet people who'll say, yeah, you know, you can do this. You can do that.
This was hilarious. Yeah, the security guard outside of the Treasury Department, like, he came back and he saw like all the graffiti and like thing on there, and then he said, "Well, it's about time." I was wondering when people were gonna wake up at his answer.
That is a powerful statement, but it's also important to note right now that for the first time, people are saying, instead of give the police more gear and more access to military equipment, they're saying it's time to demilitarize the police because this is getting out of hand. Right. They don't have a need for this kind of weaponry and this kind of equipment because they're not at war. And if they are at war, it's at war with us. And we don't want that. So the talk of demilitarizing the police, in some cases from mayors and congressmen, is a powerful statement.
Right. As I said, I'm actually hopeful. We're seeing the death throes of neoliberalism. We are seeing it's ugly. It's very freaking ugly, but it cannot last.
No, it can't. It will consume itself. It's just the matter of a question is that how many innocent people,
how many lives,
how much suffering is it going to cost in the interim?
Right.
And will that victory of it eventually consuming itself and destroying itself, will it be a Pyrrhic victory?
Right.
Or will there actually be, a reason to have hope going forward after that? The idea is that we need to minimize and prevent as much suffering and death as we can.
Right.
We can, so that they're actually, so that the victory is not for nothing, so that it's not a Pyrrhic victory.
Right. It's I think, it's imploding. That's what's happening. It's imploding. But like now you see like the propaganda on Fox News on like full blast, like saying these are leftists and they have rules for radicals and this and that, and I don't think people are buying that so much anymore.
It's like what Jeremy posted in the chat, some InfoWars headlines, which are pretty absurd.
Yeah.
Well, you touched on a point I actually wanted to make, Ariel, which is, decades ago, the reason this didn't happen was because we had gatekeepers in the media that controlled the narrative, and whoever owned the media was able to own the message through propaganda. Now, with more citizens, journalists, and everyone having a cell phone and the internet, the media is no longer the gatekeepers. The people are getting the information out there, and people are waking up to real problems in this country.
Right. And it's funny because National Guard was just stationed outside my mall just yesterday, and I just went out and I just had a little chat with them, and they were friendly. They were pretty nice, and I just said like, "Hey, like, what you guys do? Where are you guys stationed? Oh, we're here, we're there," and we still went to college and like did all these things, and they're friends with the people, I really don't see them, if it came down to it, they're going to be marching with us. And actually, like, a lot of National Guard soldiers, like, took away their shields and, like, took a knee and, like, walked with some of the protesters and stuff. So, I mean, the military comes from the people. It's not like this alien thing from outer space. They recruit from the communities inside of the U.S. They have families inside of the United States. They have property inside of the United States, and that they're more connected with us than they are with the oligarchs. So I really don't see, a big threat there.
And do you know why the military and, the National Guard is a branch of that? Do you know why the military are a lot more friendly and a lot less violent than the cops? Because they swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that oath, during their time in the military, the Constitution, unlike the police where, they may have seen it once in a while and barely know the laws that they're enforcing, the military, the Constitution is just shoved down their throat. It is drilled into their heads to the point where they can quote it backwards and forwards.
That would be, like, so weird to see, like, an uprising with, like, military that has to, like, declare a war on the police. It would be so ironic, like, the people in the military against our own police force.
Well, the police force are actually known to be most violent against veterans because they know stateside, veterans can't fight back, so they can, lord their power over them, like, oh, you've been to war, but you're not as tough as me. I'm a cop.
There's a movie about that. I think it was called Rambo.
Yep. There's another thing, too, you want to consider. Look at who from which communities the militaries draw upon for their ranks. It's poor people that don't have any other opportunities available to them to get dental care, educations, a paycheck that will be enough so that, they can actually afford utilities and housing. It's well known that...
Oh, yeah, Trump is a draft dodger.
I mean, President Bonespurs, right? But it's like, these are people that they know that their families come from, their families are being oppressed from being poor by the police. And I think that stays with them because when we talk about the effect of trauma of poverty and the hidden injuries of class, these are things that have a staying power with you that do not leave you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So young men and women join the military. If they come home and they see their sisters, their mothers, their aunties, their grandparents being knocked down to the concrete by police who really shouldn't even be trusted with pepper spray at this moment, right now, until they, get an overhaul, which includes major counseling and psychological treatment. Mm-hmm. They are not going to be well pleased. They're not going to it's not going to be well received because it's like, hey, look, I joined the military and I believe in what I'm doing.
It's like I didn't join the military so a bunch of cops can kill my family stateside.
Yeah, it's not going to be well received at all.
Right.
So there's that factor to consider.
Right.
Because troops coming home from war are looking around and saying, is this the freedoms that they say that we're fighting for?
Right.
This is bullshit.
Yeah. You know what's okay, to our viewer, to our listeners, make friends with the National Guard. Go out there and just make a National Guard.
When you run for Congress, Ariel, you should tell your story about talking to the National Guard, humanizing them.
Right. Yeah, humanize the military, humanize the National Guard.
And let them humanize you in return.
Right, and let them humanize you, and then what we're gonna say, everybody's just gonna say, hey, wait a minute, we don't hate each other, we're actually friends, and we're gonna kill each other for some guy's stock portfolio. I don't think so. Bring out the guy with the stock portfolio.
As a trader, it really upsets me to see so many people that are wealthy worship the market, tell people that they should die for the economy. The market is a tool. Like a Hilti air gun is a tool, like a bandsaw, like a set of snap-on tools. It is a tool. It is a vehicle that can be and should be able to be used and accessed by everybody. to improve and participate in the improvement of their own economic situations and to, improve the communities. It was never meant to be something that, subsumes human rights. We are the economy. Without us, there's no market.
There's no production either.
Yeah,
exactly.
All right, tell that to the military and the National Guard. Yeah, and it's like it's gonna be so. I don't know. If there's a mass awakening, then maybe it doesn't have to be as violent as we hope. We have our words, and we can use them. Yeah.
Our words, and most importantly, what we capture in picture. That includes film. That includes recording stuff. Because a picture says 1,000 words.
Right. Like the police said that guy tripped.
Yeah, that's what they said. But it's like, nah, dude, you're busted. Like, nah, sorry, you're busted. You're busted, dead to wrong. We got this. It went viral, and everybody else saw it. Everybody saw it.
Yeah.
There's no way you can ad-lib that.
The judge probably saw it.
Of course.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's the thing. We are at a point where, the same technology that was used to, watch us, keep tabs on us, and control the narrative is now being used to keep tabs on the gatekeepers, the holders of power, and saying, here's a mirror, take a very close look.
And the little brother is watching. It's about time.
Yeah. Little brother is watching, and he's got a camera.
Let's reuse that. That's a really good one. Use that as a hashtag, Ariel. Make that go.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's time because it's like, hey, we can just get everything you have that you've been using against us, and just turn it right around and use it against you. It's like, and there are more of us now than there are of you, and we know a lot about them too. We know a lot,
And more importantly, we know how to do the internet. I mean, President Twitter doesn't know how the internet works. He thought that he could just say you're fired to Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter. Mm-hmm. I just about fell out of my chair, peed myself laughing when I saw that. It's like, talk about a lack of situational awareness, man.
Right. Yeah.
It's like how the internet works,
Yeah. And also, that's not how the laws work. He went in thinking that it was going to be a kingship, and is finding out a president is not a king.
Oh, hey, Mayor Bowser has renamed 16th Street Northwest, just in front of the White House, Black Lives Matter Plaza. Here's the video of the sign going up.
And he painted the street with Black Lives Matter.
Oh, man.
Wow.
No, I'm telling you, they're fucked. They can't hold on to power anymore. They're just going like, no, we want power. It's
not. It's funny. Every dictator ends up the same way, hiding in a bunker in a sad, pathetic state.
Right.
And they all end up dead, whether it's by their own hand, like Hitler when he blew his own brains out in the bunker, or they get strung up like Mussolini.
I just want
or botched surgeries like Kim Jong-un.
Well, he's still alive, or is he? I don't know.
Is he though?
Yeah, he's still alive.
I don't know.
Kim Jong-un is still alive. His father, though, Kim Jong-il,
he was ill.
Ended up, yes, very much so. Ill in the mind and ill in the body.
Right, yeah, ill, mentally ill and physically ill.
So not unlike Donald Trump.
It's some kind of craziness, you guys. I mean, but it's like we are living in like a movie right now, if there ever was one. I mean, it's
more adventurous than the 9 lives of Fritz the cat. And I'll
But yeah, I just don't see it happening for them, for like the people who want to keep the control, because it's just not possible, especially in this day and age. They're all just going to disintegrate. It's just a matter of when.
Well,
that's the thing about power and control.
Tried telling people 12 years ago when I wrote Classism for Dimwits. John Trudell, who was a he's now dead, a famous Native American spoken word artist. He tried to tell people, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Mumia Abu-Jamal tried to tell people. I mean, it's like people have not understood. They don't understand that if you want to get a gauge on where things are headed, look at how the poorest, the most marginalized, unwanted, unwelcomed people are treated, and look to that, and you'll see exactly how they want to and eventually will treat you.
Right. If they want to treat me that way, I tie up their hands, throw them on the street, and run them over with a fucking tank.
It's funny because I told Angelo last week when we were talking during a face bud hangout. I said, if I can get out of poverty and I survive as a diabetic, through these turbulent times, in the interim, that eventually what I want to do is I want to get a repurposed Sherman tank if I come out to visit him in Arizona, because there's spiders out there the size of dinner plates that will fucking attack you and charge at you like a pit bull, man. And I said, I would totally be down with, grabbing a fucking deuce and a half and repurposing it, or military equipment like a tank, or even a giant earth moving truck. I mean, giant, like ginormous, like something that you actually have to walk up 2 stories worth of stairs to walk into. It is bigger than a house, and literally, drive down the highway doing that. It's like, okay, you want to fuck around? You want to dance? Come on, let's dance. I could operate one of those things. I used to have a CDL license. I couldn't get it renewed because now I don't have the ability with the diabetes to get the medical DOT certification, to do it. So my CDL thing lapsed, but I still have the knowledge. I know how to operate one of those things. All I need is a ride to Centralia. There's some nice abandoned giant earth moving equipment there, Centralia, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, Cybertrucks might be getting a lot more popular considering that they're bulletproof.
Well, yeah, but you know what? One of those giant-ass earth-moving trucks like they use in the mining operations in West Virginia, one of those could Google that, giant earth-moving equipment.
Oh, I know. My grandfather used to work on them. The only problem is that they're, to save on weight because they already weigh so much, the skin on them is very thin. So they're huge, but they are very difficult to... but they have, virtually no armor, and the tires are a very big weak point and a very big target. So
yeah, the tires are about as big as a 6'2" guy.
Right.
Yeah, it actually takes special equipment to change one of them.
Yes.
But yeah, Cybertrucks are bulletproof. Keep that in mind, guys.
You know what?
They look like a nice Ford F-150 King Ranch, so they look sexy. I mean, I really love a Jacqueline mobile here,
Oh, like I was telling Jacqueline, I know if she ever could afford to buy a tank, like a decommissioned tank that doesn't have active weapon systems on it, I know she would paint it bright pink and you'd be seeing that thing a mile away.
I'd be rolling in to visit Angelo and Annette in Arizona, and I would be blaring, Bachman Turner Overdrive's classic hit, Not Fragile. It's like you could look over the horizon as the heat wave ripples over the highway and see this Sherman tank coming and hear, Not Fragile. It's like, oh shit, there's Jay. There's Jack.
Yep. That's definitely her style.
That's my style.
On that note, we're at time, and I want to take a break here before we have Rokana on later today. So, thank you everybody for coming. Let's say goodbye. Starting with you, Angelo.
Thank you very much for listening. My name is Angelo Mendoza. You can find me on Twitter at Hellion Hellfire.
Thank you, Ariel.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ariel. You can follow me on Twitter as Ariels_Armada and find me on YouTube as Revolutionary Thinking.
Thank you, Ariel. Jacqueline?
And I'm Jacqueline Homan, and you can find me on Twitter at Jacqueline Homan. And yes, one of these days I will get up the courage to do YouTube videos.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Find me there too. And thank you for having us on and for making this space for us, Shale. It's really been a pleasure.
I do what I can do. Welcome back. And thank you for catching up with us. Sheridan.
It was a wonderful conversation today, guys. Thank you. I'm Sheridan. You can find me on Twitter at JSaberGamer. Have a great day, all.
Thank you, Sheridan. And then, as always, I am at SHAELRILEY on Twitter. Thank you for listening. We will be back later today with Congressman Ro Khanna from California's 17th District. So that is extremely exciting, and I hope I will see you then.